TG Geeks, episode 32, August 3rd, 2015. A Star Trek event where no one showed up? Hello and welcome to another webcast from tggeeks.com, where Ben and Keith, the Two Gay Geeks, talk about all aspects of geekdom and nerdery. Sci-fi, comics, film, horror, genre, you name it, we talk about it. I'm Keith Lane, and we are coming to you from TG Squared Studios in lovely Phoenix, Arizona.
101. Oh, shoot. Wrong show. I'm sorry.
Wrong show.
Wrong show. This is Ben Raggington in Phoenix, Arizona, obviously.
Well, this week we have an exciting interview for you, so we're just going to launch right into it. This week we have Mr. Larry Nemecek, who is an outstanding author and master of all things Star Trek. So how are you, Larry?
Whoa, I just was staggered by the burden of that title you just put on me there.
I think a lot of people would agree with that, however.
Oh, well, that's very kind. You know, I have a real life and I had real training in the world and news and theater both. And that wisdom about, try to go with what you enjoy doing, but be careful what you wish for, Lieutenant,
Yeah, absolutely.
At the same time.
You bet.
And that's where life has been. And, the first earlier years have been interesting. And the last 10 years here, the world's kind of hiccuped and reinvented itself on all these different fronts. And it's been interesting. But yeah, keeping close to Star Trek has been something I've been doing now here for a couple of decades and longer.
How did that all start?
Yeah, tell us, for those of our listeners that don't know who you are.
Shame on you.
Yeah, shame on you for one thing. But let us know who you are, what you have done, and what you are currently doing. And
I don't know. I saw these green lights on Skype and just clicked on you guys.
Hey, there we go. Just talk to anybody.
I'm happy.
Oh, that's almost pathetic.
Clicked on a green light. No, thanks guys for having me on, and congratulations on how the show's gone here for a while.
Oh, thank you.
Like I said, I've had a long training in a lot of different fields. Always had a lot of different interests, and Star Trek was one of them as a kid. I blame my ninth grade science teacher, who shamed me into going home and watching when I told her I hadn't ever done it before.
Bravo to your teacher.
Yeah. So I've tried to find Mrs. Pollard. So she was a first-year teacher. She was like young, and it's a cute little story, but I need to track her down and find out if she's still with us. And she wasn't that old, so I hope she still is. I'd like to find her sometime, but wherever she is, and say thank you. But look at what all she unleashed here.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I was a fan of, I had an interest in a lot of things. I was a NASA kid before I was a Star Trek, but I was a history buff, and I was a model railroader, and I built sci-fi, rocket models, and I had the 5-foot tall Saturn V rocket, and I loved history, and I collected stamps, and I just had a lot of hobbies. Nowadays, we would say I was just a big nerd all around, but back then you were like a hobbyist or whatever.
Exactly.
You
were that weird kid down the road.
Yeah, and eventually I became, I grew up in Central Oklahoma, so I was a big OU Sooners football fan and Dallas Cowboys fan, and football was.
Do I hear
up. So
Keith groaning?
I knew sports ball.
I hear when you said Sooners, I just heard Keith groan there for a moment.
My father was a big OU fan. I happened to go to Oklahoma State, so.
That's okay. It's okay.
Oh my!
It's not that much of a rivalry,
No, it's like more in their mind. Well, the last 10 years when Aggies got better, it's been
exactly.
the last 10, 20 years. So yeah. And I love the people around the country go, Aggies? He didn't say Texas A&M. And I go, no. Once an Aggie, always an Aggie. Anyway,
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think the Aggie jokes are quite as the Oklahoma version of Aggie jokes are quite as prevalent as they used to be. But, but no, anyway, I pull for OSU all the time, just like the rest of the Big 12. Although I miss the Big 8, I still miss the Big 8. But that's really dating me now. So
exactly.
But I miss OU Nebraska every year, and they were in the Big 12 too. But anyway, I missed the calling here for the football podcast, so I should get back to subject. But no, if anybody out there didn't know me until now, they're like, "What the hell is this guy rambling on about?" No, I was a big fan, and I was always a big background fan. And I didn't. There's a lot of things that you don't think about when you first get into something, especially when it's kind of inventing itself anyway. And it wasn't until a few years go by and I realized that I cared. I mean, I cared about, watching the episodes, and I'm talking about the original 79. I just had a real thing for the background and for the continuity, which is what we said before, canon, and I love the characters too. And I was a big underdog person. So right out of the gate, it would strike me how everything was Kirk, Spock, and the ship and group shots. And I'm like, well, what about McCoy? What about Scotty? They're all cool characters. So, and the same thing with, I love the background shows, and Journey to Babel was one of my favorite shows because it's the only time you ever got to see something beyond the damn little ship. It was like, this ship is just one little part of this whole universe, you're just running around with a bunch of guys looking out their view screen on the world, on the universe. There's really a much bigger thing out here going on, and that was Journey to Babel was the only time we saw the Federation. So, the Andorians and Tellarites and the little gold guys and everything was in the Vulcans, and all that was a lot of fun. And the same way, the Andorians came back several times, but never the Tellarites. So I was like this fan of the underdog. And so some of my more famous favorites now, I'm a big McCoy fan and was very, honored to play McCoy the first 2 go-rounds of Star Trek Continues, kind of capping it all.
I caught those too.
Oh, great. Well, I've been a big, I was a McCoy fan when it was not cool, or not so much cool. It was like, you're what? What? You don't have the right braid on your science uniform. This is Lieutenant Commander. That kind of that era. Now
Right.
people get it. But so yeah.
So it sounds like you were just really totally taken in by the Star Trek universe as a whole then.
Yeah, I mean, I said one time in an interview that it's like the way you think, thinking on this later on, going back to try to put words in how you felt about things, but it was like you could climb into your TV and that whole universe existed.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And now we talk about universes and franchises and expanded universes. But back in the day, that was, to me, I mean, Star Wars had that same effect on people. Firefly did, but it's like you could crawl, you just wanted to go through your screen and walk, and you knew the minute you did, like an Alice in Wonderland moment, you'd go through the looking glass, and the minute you were there, you knew exactly how it would all be. I mean, what you got, the little glimpses for that little amount of time every week or every day on their little budget, as you came to realize that was a factor too. But it was so imaginative that you knew exactly how things would be. You just wanted to walk into that world, and that's why people build costumes and props and models and fan fiction and now fan films, and I just want more.
So
Yeah.
clearly the Star Trek universe had something to offer that appealed to you in such a great way. Is that why you turned to writing? Because you did write a book or two for Star Trek, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're condensed. I mean, I'm still talking like being a high school kid and in college and everything. But no, I mean, yeah, when some of the early books came out, it was like, oh my God, they organized this. There was thought behind this, which made me respect it even more. And that kind of like, it's worth following this show because they're putting the time in to respect their audience and give it a continuity behind the scenes and go to the nth degree to do that. So it's worth investing in. I mean, that's intellectualizing something that you just felt on a gut level. After you watched 6 or 7 or 8 shows, you went, look, I remember getting the making of Star Trek, and I had 2 buddies, like we were like in high school, and going, look, the patch does match the shirt color. I mean,
Yeah. I remember my first.
I mean, very basic, right. So that kind, but then as you got the tech manual and Bijo's concordance and
Oh
all
my
that
God,
stuff, it was
yeah.
like,
Oh,
oh my
yeah.
God,
I had the tech manual and
I had the
Yeah.
blueprints,
The
the whole 9
blueprints, the
yards.
whole 9 yards,
yeah.
exactly.
And you were thrilled, and that was kind of when the world was waking up and going, oh, we can sell this stuff and make money. Maybe we should bring the damn thing back.
We can sell this
But-
crap.
Yeah, but it was.
But to us,
Bijo's
it's universe
concordance.
building.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, but like D&D as a basic role play game was the late 70s, early 80s. So world building is, maybe 7 sci-fi writers had that quasi concept in their head, and the rest of the world. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I got Bijo's concordance and thought, look at all these loose stars floating around here, and I was impressed that there were a lot of real astronomy in there, and I had been a space NASA kid. So that was the first thing that grabbed me. Was I was trying to flesh out the tech manual and flesh out a star chart system that made sense. Anyway. And I worked on this early version of the star maps, and that whetted me. And then I got ripped off and didn't get included in the end, and went back to school and got a life. And thank you very much. And then Next Generation came out, and I thought I would once again try to do a Bejo-like concordance for that and just sell it myself in my own little circle. And if anybody else liked it, that was cool. And that got the attention of people like Richard Arnold and Eric Stillwell at Paramount when we would cross paths at conventions. And by then I was working and had a little extra income and can go to cons. And that's where everything took off and started making, and then wound up getting the contract to write the Next Generation Companion 5 years into the show, when Pocketbooks was catching up to they were slow to react to what a huge thing Next Gen was by then. But they finally caught up, and from there it was, editing the Communicator magazine for Dan Madsen and the fan club, and the Fact Files, and all kinds of projects came along. And at one point we moved. I had been married and an instant dad, and we packed up and moved to LA, and that was like a little over 20 years ago.
Wow.
And it's coming up on 21 years now. So and then continued to have this front row seat here at the studio, and my wife worked for 5 years on Voyager.
Wow.
In the script
far
office.
out.
And we we did everything from pitch stories on Voyager and DS9 by then to start going to conventions and coming up with material that would make you a good guest at a convention, and figure out what people. So kind of then it was like blending your theater background, your journalism, and your fan awareness. And when you interviewed somebody, knowing I would read stuff all the time and go, well, this is boring, or this is the 19th time, or why aren't you asking this question, and why? And beyond that, why aren't we talking to this person, this person, this person? And so that's what I got to indulge doing the companion, and then keeping up the interviewing. And I finally dawned on me what a great little, I don't want to say gold mine, but doing the first TNG book, and then we redid it. But even as the other shows came out, so many people worked, the vast majority of people kept working on Voyager and DS9, and then new people would come in. And I would just keep up with all of it. And that's why I've got these hundreds, through the end of Enterprise. And I've got these hundreds of hours of interviews that I'm trying to get digitized. And that's, one of my things now is my little thing, my blog and site are called Trekland. And because for years I gave up trying to talk about all this. And I just said, I just work in Trekland. And now I'm remastering pieces of these interviews, like with a theme. And this will be the fourth edition. And this year it's keyed to the 20th anniversary of Voyager's premiere, the pilot Caretaker. So at Vegas Trek this year, that's what I'm madly finishing up now. But the first three are out, and I still have available. And but that's been one thing of taking this here, getting it preserved and getting it digitized before the plastic audio cassettes, deteriorate anymore. So that's been one thing. But it's been I got to everything from working on being one of the many that worked on the experience at Vegas and some of the tour shows, to just being very lucky and privileged to work on a lot of that. Again, thinking that this mix of skills I had as a fan, but also a trained professional in entertainment and also in writing and in interviewing, that was the right kind of mix. And I treat people square, so everybody on, as they got to know me, trusted me. And also I think I would kind of look at people sideways, like, people 30 years from now are going to care about this. This needs to get preserved.
Yeah.
So a lot of people put up with stuff like that. So, plus, it's like, well, my memory, and as people run around now and interview people all the time, and that's great. They should, but it's kind of like, it's not like being in the moment and having your mind fresh, and you don't forget, and you don't self-censor, or maybe sometimes you do self-censor less now, but some people are thankfully not self-censoring now as they look back. But sometimes, it's just a great thing to have. So so everything I do now, and I have other things too. I've the last couple of years I've gotten into a voiceover career, mentoring and getting out now, and I have a demo going. So that's something that's not Trek. And I'm just got to start writing for the Television Academy website, although the first thing out of the box was interviewing the executive producer for the Astronaut Wives Club, which, gets back to space buffery.
Right.
But yeah, so far, and it's not quite as, booming as it was when Trek itself was booming. We're kind of living in this age of invent everything yourself, as you guys know here doing your
Right.
podcast.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of, I've got a few little projects going on here we could talk about maybe, but that's kind of it. But I'm with you though. If you had never heard of me, shame. No, I'm kidding.
Exactly.
Now, you had mentioned before this whole ride just took off, you had a full-time job, and then you started really going into the writing and editing all things Trek. How much time of your life were you able to actually, invest in working on this passion of yours on a daily basis, while at the same time trying to eke out a daily living?
Well, I'd worked at the Norman Transcript newspaper there in Norman, where University of Oklahoma is, and probably one of the one or two best places to live in Oklahoma, and also where I was born, although I had gone to school out of state and had several different, cities. I wasn't just born and sat there for 20 years. In fact, I went to school not in Norman, but the small town just south of Norman. And when you're young, you've got a lot of time there, and when you're a kid especially,
Yeah.
and then when you're in high school, it's kind of like you got the best of both worlds. You can't get yourself different places before you have your own car, but you've got tons. Like in summer, used to be you'd had tons of time, and I would work on Trek projects and things eventually. But even after I was working in news and had gone to school, and I had a master's degree too, because I thought for a while I was going to teach college, and that didn't go that path. But we'd go to cons, and we would, I had stuff around town I did on the side, but I was a reporter the first few years, and I had a job that I'd have to go do things at night. So, um, your real life kind of ebbed and flowed with work, but I really enjoyed where I worked. I had great people that I worked with, so that's all good. Some of them are still good friends. But those last 2 or 3 years, when Next Generation came back, and I kind of got on this path of doing my TNG concordances annual updates, and then when Gene died, and the chance to do, and I'd made the tenuous connections with the studio and licensing. And then when I got the offer to do the companion, it wasn't an encyclopedia, but it was a episode guide. And then I was like, holy shit, because my head was into all about Stephen Whitfield's Making of Star Trek, and that's where my head was as far as an episode guide. So I was thinking how much interviewing I'd have to do for that. And they were like, well, Pocket's like, well, you've got all the data points, because I'd been doing this encyclopedia on
Right.
my own, before email, guys, much less before the internet
Oh, yeah.
and Wikipedia's in memory alpha, and any of the professional books had been, printed.
Back in the
So
day when something was all on paper.
yes, it was the dead tree view of the universe. And but hey, there's nothing like grabbing a book. I still have people tell me that, and I know the feeling. There's still nothing like grabbing a book off a shelf and just going, wham bang thing there.
True.
I've got it. I didn't have to wait on this thing to boot up or get over or wait for the script to go through. Or
And there's no control F.
Yeah.
Right. Wait for this damn commercial and this damn video.
Exactly.
Before I get
Yeah, no pop-ups.
Yeah, but still, and even still, and this
No
we got this in the
monetizing.
communicator. Even things like, how do you digital blueprints? There's nothing the same as unfold, which was what was fun with stellar cartography, which was a great kind of circle back after 10, 15 years and do one of those cool, like when you were a kid and you got your blueprints and you got your tech manual, doing the stellar cartography maps, the star maps, and then the guidebook that just came out about a year or so ago from Amazon. That's an official thing that's licensed, and having those big 2x3 maps to unfold and having them be from different eras and different cultures. I was very proud of that, but it was like being a kid again and going home again and not having to be Mr. Canon King and getting to be a little creative and all that. So that was fun to get back to that. And I've lost my train of thought here, but
That's all right.
yeah.
So what current projects are you working on? What is it that you're preparing for? What are you doing currently?
Yeah. Well, like I said, the last few years, like I used to be a piece of a bigger, like I was managing editor for The Communicator, which is the official magazine of the official fan club. And I also work with the Fact Files, and kind of went in tandem with the other official magazine for about 5 years. That was the big half-inch one that reprinted the techie stuff from the fact files, which was sold all over the world except for the States.
Except for the
So,
States.
and but there was so much booming and busting, and then when Enterprise went off, and there was no one in charge of the franchise, and even when the JJ movies came in, they only seemed to care about doing, they didn't jump in to create a TV show or even animation or anything. So there was a lot of inertia in the franchise, and there wasn't a lot of new stuff put out. And at the same time, the world shifted, and no, we don't do everything on dead trees anymore. And the digital world was there, and for a long time, it was like without a manual on either a single person or the biggest corporation of how in the hell to make anything pay where you could live off of it. And so that was all kind of interesting, and it all happened at once. And nobody in charge of Star Trek, and the landscape shifting and the world shifting. And so the last 10 years or so have been about me trying to, like a lot of people, trying to figure out how all that works. And so what I've come up with is a LarryNemecek.com website, and it's evolved as the web's evolved. But I have a blog called Trekland, and I have a lot of guerrilla style interviews with actors, but a lot of the creative people, and major behind the scenes people, and fans. And I've got a stockpile of probably 20 or 30 videos I should put up, and I'm racing to do a couple before Vegas. That's been interesting. But then what's happened lately is like my CDs, I make my on-speaker CDs. I decided not to do a podcast, so I've been happy to go and talk on other people's shows.
Well, we
Been
thank
doing
you.
that for 4 or 5 years. But the projects have started to kind of come along, like Geek Nation Tours. Terrace Cassidy came to me 2011 and said, "Hi, I do niche tours for geeks, everything from military
Oh
and
yeah.
historical to conventions, anime conventions, gaming conventions, whatever. Do you think a Star Trek's film site tour would work?" And I
Oh
said, "Hell
heck
yeah."
yes.
Yes, because I'd been doing research, and I'd wanted to do a book on that. So we've done that every other year, and we'll do that again next year. And it'll be even bigger. Of course, the Big 50 is coming next year, so everybody's like ramping up their game for that. So along the way, it's still been an interesting thing to figure out how to, in this new landscape, how to do things. There's still traditional things come along, like stellar cartography although that's a little untraditional. It's very cool, out of the box. In the box, out of the box. But
Well, astronomy's sort of kind of become a bit hip right now. It's pretty chic, especially with a lot of the things that Hubble has come up with.
oh, right.
So the idea of what's out there is of great interest to a lot of people, and we've seen a lot of science fiction and science fact really start to track with one another, especially among fans. A lot of people who are really into hard sci-fi are also very much into hard science, and vice versa. So I wouldn't exactly say stellar cartography is a little fringe. I think there might be a greater interest in it than most people, or that anybody might actually consider.
Right. Well, I mean, there's two ways of coming at it. One is the Trek side, and loving that it's fleshing out the background this way, and the fact that they're big. I mean, I know for one thing, there's the standard maps that have squares. The minute we did these, I said, I know gamers are going to get these, put them under plastic and under plexi or something, and use them as game boards. And that's
Right.
I've heard that's what happened exactly. But yeah, you're right that the astronomical art, just as an art form, is really popular. And whether it's got a foot in reality or a foot in just fantasy realms, it's always been there. But what's undergirding all of this, I don't have to tell you guys this, is that like the geeks won. everybody's
Absolutely.
everybody's out of the closet on that one. And it's a lot of things that I grew up doing. I mean, it's really funny. People, like the free enterprise guys like Mark and Mark Altman and Rob Burnett, when they did free enterprise, and about the one character when he was a kid wearing his Captain Kirk shirt and getting beat up at school. That never, I mean, I didn't wear a Captain Kirk shirt to school, but everything was just, everybody had all their stuff, and it was just out there. I mean, we live in a world now where, I say this all the time, Big Bang Theory is the number one show or the number one comedy. Everybody respects Comic-Con San Diego and everything else that spins off because it makes so much money. I mean, in our culture, how can that be bad or weird? They're making tons of money.
Exactly.
But so we're not quite where things were in the 70s and 80s, where you had to be, a tough guy to be a fan, and, or very secretive or whatever. But it's a hell of a lot easier for everything just to be out there, and people just to kind of, enjoy. And so much, and then the internet and social media has let people share and find new fandoms, and everything just crosshatches, and it's just amazing. It's like everything just is multiplying. I guess that's what going viral means. But the creativity that is out there and the self-empowerment that everybody has, where we used to have to like long distance call and mail stuff to each other back and forth, or if you found people that had your same interest, you might find five of them around the country,
Mm-hmm.
and heaven forbid you ever actually get to see each other. Well, now there's enough conventioneering going on, much less you jump on and Skype yourself to each other. I mean,
Exactly.
when Jeff Mandel and I worked on the first iteration of the star maps, I still had like the long letters we would write back point by point and discuss stuff and hash it out, because we couldn't afford 2 hour long phone calls
Oh my
long
God!
distance from
Not
Oklahoma
in
to New
that
York
No.
City.
not
No,
in
no,
that
no.
time. Good God! It cost you $400.
And then I had to go out and get my shoe horsed, and then I'd break down and then get my shoe horse. My horse shoed.
Exactly.
We
before
know
I
what
had-
you meant.
yeah.
We know
This
what you
before
meant.
before the anorexia got so bad, the aphasia.
Yeah.
But it is really cool. And fandom went by the cost. SASE, an SASE was a self-addressed stamped envelope. You can do
Mhm.
anything
Yeah.
for a
Right.
SASE. But anyway, we're rambling here. But what did you asked me about time putting into fandom? It was frustrating the last couple of years working at the paper when my book took off, and I wanted to quit and work full time in, not just in Star Trek. Back then I was like, I'd love to write behind the scenes guides for any show. And sci-fi or not, it was great. I thought it was this whole little cottage industry, and that would be great. And two things happened. One was when we got out here, Star Trek was booming so much that I couldn't keep up with just the Star Trek stuff that came at me. And about the time I'd think it was going to tail off, then some new whole huge thing would, and that went on for 10, 12 years. And then it was suddenly, okay, time to reinvent the world. I mean, I would have loved to have gotten more footing into other things, but there just wasn't time. And Star Trek was so huge and big and full and fulfilling that, and got the chance to travel and guest at conventions, and got to go to Europe, and it's Chico Escuela, baseball been very good to me.
You're right.
Yeah, and so now things are a little less hectic, and it's been a real inventive way of trying to figure out, what things are. So yeah, you talk about my project. The Enterprise in Space is a real world project where that founder and team came to me to put student experiments into orbit, and to honor the name Enterprise, and to honor all the future looking sci-fi and science fact and early NASA missions, and people getting excited about space and science, and kids getting excited about space, and the whole, they don't just say STEM now, they say STEAM: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And
Wow.
that's an incredible nonprofit that came to me and said, would you be a spokesman for us on the fan circuit and to the sci-fi celebrities, and help us out? And I said, sure. And it's just about to, people have been working on it for 4 years before I got into it. And then we got it launched last fall kind of quietly, but it's about to explode and be in the news here in the next 2 or 3 months. And I'll just tease that out there to you guys. But that's been incredible to be. And that kind of, again, takes circles back around to the real world and real, there's always been a NASA Star Trek mutual love affair,
Right.
Both ways. So, but that's something else I've been involved. And as we get out on the con circuit and the tours, that's one of the things that I'm talking about now and sharing that project, enterpriseinspace.org.
Really cool.
That's
out
cool.
there. Yeah.
So next weekend you're going to be at the big Vegas Con. So what can people expect to see you doing at Vegas Con?
Well, it's really funny to talk about that, because this sounds weird now to say, well, I'm always at Vegas. I was at the first one, because it used to just be the other day. I mean, they started in 2001 when the experience had been there for 2 or 3 years, and not Creation, but a guy that used to have a company called Slanted Fedora said, why aren't we doing conventions in Vegas with the experience there? And then his wasn't at the Hilton. It was at a I call it Ranch Con, at like a 1-story sprawling motel, but they had some events at the old Hilton and the old Star Trek experience. But then the next year, Creation got in and kind of got the handle on it, and has, since 2002 have had it. And it's so much, just the last 4 or 5 years, social media and cosplaying and everything it's just exploded. And the influence of Comic-Con, CBS as the licensing agent has gotten more involved and gotten a lot of the licensees and their products and their cool stuff more in a Comic-Con realm where people in their, supporting their stuff and having creative panels to back things up. And it's not just about going and watching your favorite actors on stage and standing in all the lines for autographs and photo ops and all that stuff. But that's still a big part of it. And people have gotten self-empowered. People are running around having bowling tournaments and photos, meetups. So the Monster Maroons are going to have a picture here this day, and now they're having the zombie walk over here. And whatever you're wearing, you zombify it up, throw some blood on yourself, and hopefully washable, and then they do a picture. I mean, there's so much like that going on. But as far as me, Adam and Gary there at Creation have been very good to me, coming out of when we always had the communicator and the fan club table, and then the StarTrek.com table, the old StarTrek.com, before it was disbanded as a news and feature team. And since then, they've let me have a table, and I have my photos from some of the acting that I've done, including Continues, and I have my Trekland on CD speaker CDs. This year we'll premiere Volume 4, and I'll have information about Enterprise in Space, and I'll have information about the Con of Wrath, which
yes, that was the
Dr.
next.
That was the next
question.
Well, see, the Con of Wrath, I should finish it up. We'll do that. And I'm also, and I'll circle back to this later if we can, I'm launching, after years and years of people saying, well, what are you doing with Star Trek? What, it's still figuring out the world and the landscape, and what do you do online, and what do you do digitally, and what can technology do, and what's something new, and what's just something nobody's thought to do yet. And between the fan films and every podcasts like you guys, people are being so fresh and so innovative. But there's still some things I wanted to do, and I'm on the verge of unveiling that at Vegas too. But the first step I took toward not just being a word guy, I was just very frustrated for a long time. I got to do 2 of the pods that were in the initial version of the Star Trek The Exhibition. That was the big tour show that started in 07, 08. But then the ownership changed, and the people I was working with changed. And I had just wanted for a long time to, we're becoming more media. It's not just enough to record people and do writing anymore. And I'd always been good with people, and, I host events and do public moderating and interviewing. So I had wanted to do that. And I just had a light bulb moment one time. I had been, my first road trip as a kid out of college was to a big event called, which got our eye, called the Ultimate Fantasy, which after just maybe 10 years into Star Trek conventions, as opposed to like old time sci-fi conventions that had been around for a long time, but specifically Star Trek, which again wrote the book on what modern fandom is like, Before they were inventing stuff before the internet was there that they wish they'd had the internet for, but nobody knew it then. It's like, how can we get more Star Trek to more people all the time? How do we scratch the itch? And but these guys in Houston innovated this first kind of arena rock star idea for a out of the box convention called the Ultimate Fantasy. Which
you were just going as a guest.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, 2 of my friends and my little brother, and it was like our first big road trip to go to a convention that wasn't just like in state. As we say in the movie now, it did not quite go as it was intended, but I took pictures. We got through it. We had a good time, kinda-ish. Got back home, and then 30 years or almost 30 years later, I'm at a con party back home, and I hear somebody talking about Houston and the Ultimate Fantasy. And I went over and I said, were you at the Con of Wrath? Which was what the fans called it that weekend, aside from Ultimate Fiasco and Ultimate Fallacy and the Ultimate and all this
Whoa,
stuff.
okay.
Whoops.
We'll have to edit that out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No,
okay.
you can allow one F-bomb and you're okay.
Well, bleep me, and it'll just be nice texture. I won't go on a tirade. But it was all with the the thing there off of Ultimate Fantasy. But some people came up and called it the Con of Wrath because Wrath of Khan had just been out for 2 weeks when this all happened.
Right.
So anyway, I found a guy who was not just a survivor, but he was in the crew. And that led to getting me in touch with all the people that had worked on it, and and I knew that Harv Bennett, who was a major player who was there, and the original series cast was all there except for Leonard Nimoy. And anyway, conofwrath.com, you can read about it. But I decided right there that I had enough stuff that it was a producible, small budget producible documentary. And so I've just been doing little bits of it along, but here this year kind of coming up on this year now, we're kind of wrapping it up with kind of the target of having it out. I'm still not exactly sure what form that'll take. We'll have some premieres, festival appearances, hopefully. I'm not sure exactly what route that'll take now, but this very wild and wacky kind of Phoenix, Star Trek's most glorious failure from fandom kind of event, to preserve it so it's around and it tells the core story and then all these kind of wacky sidebar stories that happen. Are very much worth preserving. And when Harv Bennett and Walter Koenig both said, not only yes, but hell yes, I knew we would get it done. So that's been taking up more increasingly bits of my time, probably not as much time as it should have. And we're doing that. So I have the last couple years at whenever I'm a live guest at conventions, I have what has now come to be called the Dr. Trek Show. And it's a live event for 2 hours, and it's a crowdfunder basically, and you put in $20, and so for 2 hours we show clips from the documentary interviews, and I have rare Trek video, and we do some trivia and prizes, and hopefully everybody goes home with at least something. But you get your name in as a screen credit donor like you do at that level online, but when we have the chance to be live and all together, then we have a great little. Usually it's like a late night thing. It's like a 9 to 11, 10 to midnight kind of thing. Sometimes it's on the grid of the convention, sometimes it's off the grid,
Right.
depending on how helpful they are, or how huge the thing is. But I'll be doing that at Vegas too. So
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
so I've got a couple of panels we're going to do. They usually have me do some kind of innovative trivia. I'm not doing any content panels this year, except for joining in with Adam and Richard Arnold on a remembrance for Leonard Nimoy. So the stage time is going to be a little light this year, unless I get dragged up on a couple things I'm not aware of yet. But I'll have table time. My Dr. Trek show will be Saturday night. Hopefully I can hit the karaoke this year. And then Wednesday night, the night before, the Roddenberry's Mission Log podcast and Glue Guns and Faith. Basically, my friends John Champion and Mary Cherwinski, a couple of other sponsors. We have a kind of a meetup called the Landing Party there at the Masquerade Bar on the eve of the con. And we have games and prizes and good time. And that's where I'm going to unveil my new thing, which is called Portal 47. It's kind of a new fan subscriber, have a convention all year long in all the new ways the 21st century lets us experience
cool.
the 24th century. So I'm going to unveil that there. I did a
Portal
sneak peek
47.
at San Diego Comic-Con, and it's hard to talk about on the air, so
Yeah,
I'll just leave everybody with that tease.
that is cool.
All right. Now going back to Con of Wrath.
You were one of 400 people that attended that.
Well,
is that right?
my question was going to be, I mean,
Almost.
obviously you don't want to go into too many details because you want people to be able to watch the documentary that you've been working on. But could you, just to whet the appetites of some of our listeners, could you give us some little tidbits here and there as to why this ultimate F-up was such an F-up?
Well, I say these kids, very capable event-producing young 20s and 30-somethings with some financial backing who had done conventions before. The lead guy, Jerry Wilhite, dreamed up this whole new concept where it wouldn't just be Q&A and some autographing, but this would be an arena show, like the rock show of Star Trek, where, and there have been things, it's been 30 years since, there have been things like this done in ways. The European conventions kind of start off feeling this way, the way they have some of their indoor fireworks for their opening ceremonies and things. But they envisioned this show at the arena, like a couple hours, where there'd be a band, a revolving stage with a talk show. People could interact with moderation, but like Nichelle could sing with the band, and Walter could write a one-act play they'd perform, and there'd be a laser show. And they were really just trying to dream big and have something that nobody had ever had before, and have the entire cast all together, which had never happened before either. So there have been a couple of times where they'd come close, but not done that. And what's amazing is this would be an adjunct onto one of the regular big conventions called Houston Con that happened every year already, where you had your regular, dealer's room and art show and masquerade and autographing and authors and artists and all that stuff would happen there. But over at what used to be the place where the Houston Rockets played NBA basketball,
Mm-hmm.
and where all the rock shows and the Broadway shows would come into town at the Summit Arena, which funnily enough is now Joel Osteen's megachurch.
Go figure.
And I should say, who have been very kind as we filmed. They've let us film in there several times, gone up to the catwalk, because part of what we've done is not just have all these people talking, actors, the organizers, a lot of the dealers who were there, because there's just all kinds of little stories that spun off of the basic thing that this grew and grew and grew, got people excited. Walter got everybody in the cast while they shot The Wrath of Khan all excited about this, with the exception of Leonard Nimoy, who then at the very last minute wanted to come, and they said no to. Go figure.
Oh my
which is
God.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Okay. Mistake number
I know.
one.
Yeah, but it's another part of this whole thing has been also contrasting then and now. Like, what's the same? What's different? Could this happen again? But basically, the long and the short is this grew until they kept thinking they had so much. They got Starlog magazine, which pre-internet was the Bible of science
Right.
fiction.
Big
Carrie
time
O'Quinn,
subscriber. Yeah.
right? Carrie O'Quinn was going to be the MC of the talk show part of the stage part.
Mm-hmm.
This grew to the arena held 17,000.
Oh my gosh.
They thought they'd put 1,000 more floor chairs and charge extra to have the floor seats. The stage would be built in the middle of the arena floor, like at the half court line, with a revolving stage on it shaped like an Enterprise insignia patch, the Delta,
Mhm.
the
Right.
red. with a captain's chair at the top of the point, and that's where the MC would be, and maybe Shatner would sit there, if they were lucky. They got the idea, and they were hearing back from people that it was a sellout. They were getting all these. They kept adding
Oh
shows.
my God.
Oh, so this
they
was like
wound up with
multiple
3.
show times?
They wound up with 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday.
Oh no.
Yes, 18,000 seat arena shows. All the cast were excited about this, and they had vacation pay. They had full page ads in Starlog, which is how I knew about it, and the people around the country. You just showed up thinking this is going to be the biggest, the most. This, if you were a Star Trek fan in 1982, you had to get yourself to Houston, Texas.
Right. This was going to be the biggest thing since sliced bread.
It was since sliced Andorian bread, and
Exactly.
or whatever. And it all, and the not just fans, but the crew were all. And then on the Friday of the regular convention opening and the Friday before the shows on Saturday and Sunday, reality smacked everybody in the face. And the thing melted down, but then it didn't. And that's the story of the documentary. The fact that this thing happened in spite of it, and technically everybody got exactly what they had planned to get out of it. It just was not this huge gift that was going to keep. They had planned to go on to New York and Chicago and LA and Vegas,
wow.
and they were going to have Nimoy and Ricardo Montalban wanted to get in on it after that. And
Oh my Lord.
where they were, and they were totally. What's amazing is when all this happened, and the people that were there came away with all the different little sidebar stories that happened. People blamed Jerry and the people in the middle for being, scumbags or running off with money or whatever. There was no money to run off with, but this little thing was threatening to just kind of die away over the years. And I had my kind of vivid memory of it. I took some pictures that weekend. Anyway, when I ran into a guy who was the tech director, we got to going back to this, and we kind of resurrected the original cast of the crew. And like I said, I found out that when Harv and Walter would both talk to me about it on camera, I launched off then. So by now we've got Harv and Walter and Nichelle and George Takei, and I'm going to make a pass at Shatner. We lost Leonard here just as we were kind of starting to talk about it. But also Laura Banks, who was Khan's augment Botany Bay person, girl, babe, helmsman with a line, who was actually there also. And Carrie O'Quinn, I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
All those are like the names involved, but we also have the organizers, and we have a lot of the fans. I call them the survivors who were there, and the dealers. I've come out of this one to do just a documentary about the dealers and call them con carnies.
There you go.
Oh, that's good.
That's great.
But anyway, so that's the gist of it, and at the same time, talk about the events, but also talk about fandom then and fandom now, and what's the same and what's different. And I mean, one of my little mini soapboxes is all this about the geek girl revolution. And it's like, I just laughed at that because I go, guys, women started Star Trek fandom because of
Bijou.
yeah, Joe and the Concordance, but also the women that started the Well Committee and Terry Meyer and Interstat magazine, and just the major convention. The whole fanzine movement was women,
Mm-hmm.
90% women. All the early zine authors, Joni Winston, Marshak and Culbreth, and oh my God, I'm going blank on all their names, and a lot of them are still with us. And it's just kind of laughable. I mean, I'm not laughing at all the little anime girls that have come over out of and revolutionized Comic Cons and brought all this, but it's like women. You dig up as much footage and photography as you can now, and stories. I mean, I almost want to. That's almost another idea for a documentary, is talking about how Star Trek fandoms. I remember watching the Shatner Get Alive skit on Saturday Night Live the first time and thinking, okay, having these teenage boys is one thing, but where's all the middle-aged women?
Right.
That's my stereotype of a Star Trek fan by then, because it'd been 10, 15, 20 years by then. But so that's the Con of Wrath. We call it fandom's Star Trek's most glorious failure, because it happened in spite of itself. We asked people, do you think could this happen today, given the state of franchises and was that original Star Trek cast, so even though they were pissed about it in various ways, they stayed and did all three shows.
Really? Wow.
The way it was supposed to, even though not 18,000 people each house, they had basically 800, 1,200, and 1,000 in the house.
Wow.
Kind of sad.
3,000 people altogether.
Meanwhile, the regular convention was kind of going along the way it ought to, but the hotel, the old Shamrock Hilton in Houston, which had a convention center next to it, had overbooked the whole facility with like 4 groups, and they were picking on the Trekkie kids to get rid of. And when they heard that basically the reality hit with a couple of days to spare, and they were going to dissolve the corporation and go bankrupt, they decided they'd pick on the kids. So then there was a huge furor back at, which should have been totally a totally separate situation. But the main convention and the fans who had bought packages for their rooms and admission to everything and their tickets, there was a whole chaotic thing going on back there. And that all got caught up in all of this.
Oh
And
my
it was just, I mean, I've been at a couple of other conventions, especially one that happened in Dallas in 2008. I don't know what it is about TexasCon. The big meltdown shows, but this was kind of special because it was early, relatively early fandom, and one Star Trek, one cast, no bloody A, B, C, or D.
Right.
Right.
And it was just kind of a golden time. And so it was great to get a lot of this stuff. I just wanted to preserve it. And it was a great it's a great chance to talk about, fandom before the internet and before cell phones and before all these multiple would casts and other franchise shows. Can anything compare to where they were at the time? And would anybody in that kind of situation, and when similar things have happened, what has happened? And who would go on for the whole weekend now knowing what was going to happen?
Exactly.
It just was kind of interesting. But I just thought it really needed to be part of our pop culture history to be preserved. And we didn't go in with a huge budget, so we didn't go in like wham bang like Shatner can do his documentaries and, do it in 6 months, start to finish kind of a thing. So although Rod Roddenberry told me, his Trek Nation famously, he went through several editors and edits and things over about 8 years.
Yeah, that took him quite some time to put that together.
He looked at me and said, "Just don't take 8 years to do it."
Yeah.
So we're trying to put the wrap to that, and again, it was kind of an armchair weekend project, but we're trying to come in for a landing now and get that wrapped for the next year or so.
I was about to ask where you are in the production of this. Is it being crowdfunded at this point in any sort of way, or is it just so close to completion that it's just now sort of on cruise control?
We thought about Kickstarter earlier. When I started on this, it was before Kickstarter and Indiegogo and crowdfunding became a thing. I mean, I had one guy with experience who told me, "Oh, you should think about doing this thing called Kickstarter." And I did it. I didn't want to do that, and then I almost went back on it and came back again because I didn't see doing this in a condensed way. And since then, there have been so many fan films that have done Kickstarters and Indiegogos, like Continues and Axanar and Phase 2 and different projects and some non-Trek things too, Fifth Passenger and Space Command famously. But I do have a PayPal donation page there at conofwrath.com. and people can contribute at different things. But that's all based on the first page, the first setup I did like in 2012 when I had one person that I knew had done this. And within like a year of setting that up, then it became this hot thing and a trendy, windy thing, and people making themselves out to be Kickstarter coaches, and it became this cottage industry.
Exactly.
But
We're going to help you set up your Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah,
for 20%.
Kickstarter is set up to be like a month-long thing, so that wasn't going to quite fit the idea I had for this anyway. But as we come down to the ending, I might do something like that for the post. But I've also had people step forward to be associate producers and put not a huge chunks of money, because this doesn't need to be a big budget. It's going to depend on if we want to do some CG or animation and that kind of thing, to help froth it up. But we've got real footage from the Times, from 2 or 3 sources, and some news tapes, and people talking now. But I didn't want it to just be a talking head, a palooza kind of thing. So I mentioned we went back to the summit. We also went back to the convention center. The hotel, the old Shamrock Hilton, very controversially got torn down in the 80s there for the locals. But the convention center part still stands. It's part of the Texas Medical Center bought it out. And we got through with them, and we went in and filmed and had people talking and doing storytelling in those parts too. So we've got some walking and talking and feeling the vibe of the time, as well as, and a lot of still photography and all that. I've got some people back in the East I'd like to try to catch on a trip.
Cool.
But otherwise, we've done it all with the people in Houston and people in LA, and we made a trip up to Seattle to get one of the organizers and to get Wendy Doohan, Jimmy's widow, young widow. So she speaks for Jimmy, so he's represented in this as well.
Yes, I saw her in the trailer that you have on your website.
Yeah, and I have to tell guys, everybody go. That trailer so needs to be taken out and cleaned.
Blow the dust off of it.
It's been there for like 2 years.
Well, Neil did pay, Neil Halford, who
Yeah.
I guess is your partner in crime in terms of Conrad.
I should. It's okay to mention Neil's name.
Yes.
You guys
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, he posted on Facebook for a Throwback Thursday, so that kind of says a lot.
Yeah, and we just picked it up, and then he said, "Oh yeah, I was going to tell Larry that he needs to talk to you." So,
Yeah, and I'm glad he did. I'm glad. No, I mean your listeners or know Neil now. So yeah. Neil, I knew from Fanda back in Oklahoma, and not around this, a few years after Rathacon time, but for 2 or 3 years when he was in college, and then before he moved out to San Diego and got into his game career and his filming career. But I was just telling him the original story, and he said, "Oh, I want to film it if you let me." And I said, "Okay, I got no idea about money. It's going to be small budget." He said, "I don't care. I want to do this." And my editor, David Dobson's the same way. I know him through our political club here in Burbank, and I was just telling him the story. He said, "Oh, I want to be your editor." And I said, I no money yet. And he said, "I don't care. We'll work on it." So with that core, we set sail. And, as we get into the post and fluffing it up, I'll add some pieces too. But it's been the kind of thing. I watched Roger Nygaard, who worked on the Trekkies documentaries, and then he did his own totally non-Trek documentary. But he and a few other people, as I just met on the con circuit and crossed paths with, could see how you could do something. If you weren't under we're going to get this done in 6 months, like a regular feature would, like anything scripted would be done, or hopefully scripted. We've got so many fan projects, indie projects going. But if it could be the kind of thing where you just bit off a few bites at a time and did it over. And if you weren't in a huge hurry, but not as an excuse to never get it finished, if you could go with that model and just do a little bit at a time, that's what we've done. And it's been great. I've lost 50 pounds along the way from when we first started.
That's a good thing.
So that's kind of interesting in a good way. I'm not on camera all the time, although I tell part of my story too, and we talk with some people. But it's really about all these different. And I tell you, there are some wacky doodle sidebars, and I'll just leave it at that.
I'm intrigued.
I'm really curious about this. Well, I was very excited just on the main story itself, but given what you shared with us so far, I'm very excited.
I haven't even brought up the flaming rubber ball of balloon falling on people, or Shatner almost burning himself on flash pots, or the young girl that had the crush on him, or the letters shoved under people's doors in the hotel Friday morning that came early about they had to get out and repay for their rooms, or passing the hat in the dealer's room, or yada yada yada. So
It truly was the con of
Yeah.
wrath.
Or the news crew showing up and chasing down these 20-somethings about why is Star Trek ripping off its fans, and Harv Bennett calling the network news divisions, everybody he knew, to tell them not to run stories out of Houston. All those kinds of things.
Oh,
Wow.
can't wait to hear about it.
Kirstie Alley at one of her only 2 conventions she went to for Star Trek.
I wonder if this is what turned her off about doing Star Trek 3 all of a sudden.
I think turning her off on Star Trek 3 was like not getting hired again. But I thought this was her only one until I found out that she and Laura Banks told me this, that they did another convention like in the Bay Area, San Francisco, but that may have been the only 2 events that she did before her Star Trek train derailed.
She might. In fact, I think I
got
might
kind
have
of
been
a
at that
bit
one. Now that I think about it, because
Oh.
I used to live in San Francisco, and I was going to cons all the time back then. So it's possible I might have been at that one. Well, for anybody who wants to follow everything that you're working on, especially Con of Wrath and your upcoming Portal 47.
Yeah.
How
And,
can
and if you
And
guys
Enterprise
don't know
in
the
space.
saga of 47, do you know
No.
the connection of 47 to? Well,
No,
that's
is
a whole
that-
panel.
Is
That's
that the
a whole
meaning of
podcast
life
in
and
itself, but
everything?
47 is the most common random number in the universe.
Is it really?
It is, according to a math professor at Pomona College who made it a little thing there that Joe Minosky took and brought back to the next generation writers, and then it quickly went viral before that was a thing, and all through Star Trek, and yeah. So
Interesting.
47 is like and one time Rick Berman said that 47 was 42 from Hitchhiker's Guide,
right?
Yeah.
adjusted for inflation.
There you
um,
go.
Okay, I can accept that.
So the cult of 47 now. Anyway, that's where that came from. So Portal 47 is going to be a whole new gateway to taking your Star Trek fandom awareness to a whole new level.
Well,
So
we look forward to that.
So for people who want to follow, everything that you're working on, to follow what the status is of Con of Wrath, and to learn more about Portal 47, how can they do that?
well,
I mean,
all
are you-
things Trekland, you
Yeah.
can go to LarryNemecek.com. Pretty simple there. My Facebook is Larry Nemecek's Trekland, and my Twitter is just at Larry Nemecek. There's also a Facebook page for the Con of Wrath, and there'll soon be a Facebook for Portal 47. And I also have a thing called Trekland Trunk, which is my non-used car salesman-y, non-greasy way of having a lot of stuff I just stuck back in my archives over the years, like memos and draft scripts and set plans and promotional things, cool Trek stuff. Occasionally something not Trekish. If there's anything retail, it's like 70s, 80s stuff that I just glommed onto and stuck away. But on both eBay and on a little live and local Sunday auction we do on Facebook, and I just kind of put it out there, and sometimes it floats your boat and sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of people have come away and very reasonable prices, I should say, too. But like right now, there's a first draft script of the Enterprise episode Bound, and or this week anyway. If I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say that. But anyway, there's just a whole bunch of oddball things on eBay under Trekland Trunk. Or the main thing is, I don't like to talk about it. I just put it out there for people. I say, here it is, and then you guys look and see what you like. I don't want to be the creepy guy running around selling stuff online. So
you
the
open up
Trekland
your
Trunk.
trench coat. And you see anything here you like?
Yeah, Vulcan Rolexes. Ooh,
Ooh,
yeah.
yeah.
So just as one last question, you really strike me as just insanely busy. You're just going all over the place. I mean, you're bouncing faster than a pinball. Whenever you do have the time, what do you do for your own personal recreation or enjoyment?
Oh, well, I have my Sooners in the fall. I may start watching Dallas again if they ever get going again. But no, football is kind of the only sport that I follow, really. But I'm a huge Will Rogers fan also. And it was years later that Terry Rio, who wrote the biography of DeForest Kelley, was pointing out how much alike Will Rogers and DeForest Kelley are. And their
Really?
personas. Yeah, if you think
interesting.
about it. But anyway, I'm a big fan of his, and I'm a docent at the growing up, Claremore was too far away from Norman to be able to do anything up at the museum, the memorial museums up there. But here in LA, Will Rogers State Historic Park, his ranch house that he had all through his 20s and 30s time, he and the family here, and where he was living when he died, we do house tours there. It's Santa Monica Pacific Palisades area. So I'm a big fan of his and work with our docent group there. Someday I did a one-man show of him that was really a ripoff of James Whitmore's one-man show of Will Rogers. Someday I'm going to get that out and do that when Star Trek settles down a little bit. But that's one of my things. But I'm a big history buff, and I just love that, and we love all kinds of music. I used to play keyboards a lot more often than I do now, and again, I've been working on getting my voiceover work off the ground here more and more, which is a lot of network training and now networking and demoing and auditioning. So so that's all going on too. But that's it. And my family, we raise kids in the middle of all this, and they're out on their own. And we just empty nested in the last couple of years finally.
Wow.
So
Wow.
and Janet and I finally, I've been trying to get Janet. I used to do the cons. Janet worked on Voyager 5 years, and the last couple of years here, I've been trying to get her out maybe a couple of times on the con circuit with me. We used to pitch stories, and we sold what became Prophecy the last year of Voyager. Although we sold it before the pilot aired, and then it sat on the shelf for like 6 years.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things like that, but we like to travel, and separately, together, our lives go different paths. And I'm going to get to go to, I should say, conventions are coming up. Salt Lake Comic-Con this fall after Vegas, and there's 2 or 3 I'm hoping to get to. But then I've got some regular ones I always go to: SoonerCon back home, and San Diego Comic-Con, and of course Vegas. I wound up going to the Lake Charles conventions a lot, hoping to get back to Houston and things back east. So Phoenix Comic-Con, I've been there off and on more often than not lately. And,
Yay!
Yay! There you go. So that's all. Oh, and next year I have a couple of cons in the UK.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
far out.
Sounds like fun.
We went to cons in Germany for about 8 or 9 straight years, this one in particular, and I'd love to get back over there and some of the conventions around Europe, but hadn't been in the UK much at all, and did one a couple years ago, and this is going to be 2 more fanish ones that I'm really looking forward to, back-to-back weekends with a week in between. So that'll be in March. So that's all at my site. I have a calendar up at LarryNemecek.com, and coming up, well, as some archives and a portal to the blog. It needs a makeover too, but we'll get to that. So
are you on Twitter or Instagram or any of those?
yeah,
other...
Twitter. I keep debating about Instagramming. I probably should do a third, but no, I'm pretty active on Twitter. Although Twitter, you'll get 3/4 Trek and about 4th progressive politics and an 8th Will Rogers, and in football season OU football. So
well, hey, who cares?
Well, there's something for everybody.
Exactly.
Something for everyone. Yeah.
Something for everybody. All right. Well, thank you, Larry Nemecek, for joining us here on the TG Geeks webcast.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me, and good luck. And I'm glad it's it's launched so well, and good luck with all good things down the road.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and great success for you in the future, as well as your family.
Thank you, guys. We're gonna figure this thing out someday.
Yes.
Yeah, baby. They're like 2 gay geeks. They're together, They're 2 gay guys, and they're geeks. Is that okay?
Here are a few selected birthdays for August 3rd through August 9th. August 3rd, Michael Ealy is 41. Do you know who that is?
Michael Ealy, that name rings a bell. Didn't we see
Almost
him?
Human.
Yeah, Almost Human. I thought so.
Exactly, yes.
Yes, he was the, I guess you call him a replicant.
Yes.
Of sorts.
Replicant, yes.
Awesome.
He was. That was an
Loved
awesome
him.
show.
That was such a great show.
Absolutely. Evangeline Lilly on August 3rd is 35. How about that? August the 4th, Barack Obama is 53.
Hail to the chief.
Yes. August 5th, Neil Armstrong would have been 85. I told you that I met Neil Armstrong in Muskogee, didn't I?
Yes, you did. I
That
think that's
was
kind of
like
exciting.
Forever ago.
Yeah.
August the 6th, Ty Simpkins is 13. You know who that is?
Actually, no, I don't.
He was the kid in Jurassic World as well as in Iron Man.
Ah,
So
the young kid, the young Tony Stark wannabe.
Exactly.
Okay.
And also on August the 6th, M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong is 44.
He's never going to live that name down now, is he?
Exactly. Never. Thank you to Mike
Never.
Meningay. August the 7th, David Duchovny is 54. And Mata Hari, also known as Gertrude Marguerite Zell, was born in 1876. August the 8th, Dino De Laurentiis would have been 96. And on August 9th, Eric Banya is 46. And that's the birthdays for this week.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hey, this is Crazy Joe.
And this is Dave, host of Megapodzilla,
The podcast equivalent to a 100-foot radioactive robot lizard.
but with horn-rimmed glasses and a pocket protector.
That's nerdy. We're on the rampage, laying waste to the geek landscape.
We'll talk movies, TV, comics, toys, video games.
And sometimes we talk turkey.
Don't you mean chicken?
That's right. So check us out at megapodzilla.com.
We're also available on iTunes and the Zune Marketplace.
Aw, yeah.
Head on over and check out Crazy Joe at Megapodzilla. Give him a listen.
They just released an episode, too.
Yeah. So thank you to Crazy Joe. He's always a loyal listener of ours.
Quite.
And speaking of loyal listeners, it's time for listener feedback. And we have a lot of feedback this week.
Yeah, and it all came from one person, too. Arkle, we love you. Wow.
Yeah.
He had a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, but we did a lot of news last week.
We
so
did
had
do a lot of news.
A lot to talk
so
about.
Exactly. He had a lot to talk about, and I'm not going to cover it all. So if anybody wants to know everything that he said, just go over to our YouTube channel, episode 31, and you can read all of Brian's comments there. But I will touch on just a few things. First off, he mentions that Leafold did create the character of Deadpool because apparently he was not allowed to write for Deathstroke. Interestingly enough, I did not know that, but I guess that kind of helps clear things up in terms of why there is such a similarity between them. He also makes reference to the TV series Arrow and when there will be any word of a season 3 on Netflix. Well, honestly, we don't know about that. And then he makes the joke about, are we going to recapping the entire series for him? No, I'd rather not. I'd rather you be able to watch it. Personally, I have a feeling that it will probably happen sometime after season 4 has begun to air. I'm not entirely sure how far.
Maybe just before season 4 airs.
Well, to be honest, I'm really not sure how far Netflix is behind. I know that with Hulu, they run a full series a year behind what's being broadcast in terms of full series package. So I don't know about Netflix. I'll have to take a look at that. But I would guess that once series 4 is either about to ramp up or has started airing, that season 3 would then show up on Netflix. If anybody's got any ideas on that, please let us know.
Yeah, please do.
So that poor Arkle will be able to maintain his Arrow fix.
Yes, please let us know.
Absolutely. Now, then he also talks about Bones. We had made the comment that Bones seem to be very rooted in science as opposed to Sleepy Hollow, which is very much in the supernatural. And he wrote, Bones isn't supernatural? How else do you explain the episode with a computer virus and a barcode on a human bone that made the computers catch on fire? Seriously, and I thought the two people on one keyboarding thing on NCIS was as stupid as TV could get with computer stuff. Well, okay, to be fair, Keith and I are way behind on our Bones watching. In fact, we just finished watching season 1 earlier this week.
No, it's season 2. We were on season 2.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I take that back.
Season 2. We already watched these.
We have watched season 1. That's right. We just finished season
Yes.
2. Not that means a whole heck of a lot, given that there are like 9 seasons.
97 seasons already.
Yeah, so we got a lot of ground to cover, and that's going to be really tough considering we just added something else to our plate.
Yes, Continuum.
Yeah, we added Continuum to our plate. We're like into the 4th or 5th episode now. So
Oh
that's...
my God, I don't know why. Well, I do
I
know.
do know why we didn't pick
we
it up.
didn't pick it up.
Yes, and you can blame that one on me, and we'll talk about that later. And then lastly, we talked about Lauren Ambrose, who is going to be cast in the new X-Files miniseries, and I made the big claim that her other big role was in 6 Feet Under, and then he writes, wasn't Lauren Ambrose also in Torchwood Miracle Day? Well, I'm going to say that maybe she was. I don't know, because I care to forget Miracle Day. Yeah. I'm going to come on record. I really, really disliked Torchwood Miracle Day in the worst way possible. So if she was in it, and I have every reason to believe that she was, it's memory repression. Because I don't want to remember anything about that episode to save my life. I thought it was just an utter piece of garbage. And of course now I've gone off and said my piece. What do you remember of it?
Oh, I hated it. It was just, yeah.
I think a lot of the Brits hated it.
Yeah.
To be honest.
It was awful.
Yeah. Anyway, he says, granted, I couldn't blame you. Forgot about her on Miracle Day for that matter. Badumtish. But as for the X-Files, nerd confession time, I'm not jazzed about this, which is kind of sad because I love the X-Files in my youth. But between the main series running too long, which he is right, it outlived its shell. It went on too long. It outlived its usefulness. The moment you got rid of Mulder and Scully, the show just really took a serious nosedive. It just wasn't any good anymore. So he says, I'm not jazzed about this, which is kind of sad because I love the X-Files in my youth. But between the main series running too long and the second movie really only being saved by a great supporting turn by Billy Connolly, okay, I think I need to see it again, and Fringe being way better off, I'm just kind of over it.
Yeah.
Well, you may not be all alone on that. We'll just have to wait and see. There do seem to be a lot of people that are very jazzed about it, but well, I'm not exactly one of them. I'm not a huge X-Files fan. Every once in a while, they'd have a really great episode, and then they'd pair it up with something that I thought was just thoroughly disgusting and made me want to vomit.
I never really watched the X-Files. So.
I just it was very inconsistent for my taste, which is why I didn't follow it on very much. Anyway, as for Continuum, yes, we just started watching it, and I will take the blame because when we tried to first watch it after it first premiered, I could not get 10 minutes into the episode because I personally dislike TV shows where our hero/heroine is all of a sudden lost in time with the possibility of them never getting back. And that's just
Yet you'll watch Doctor Who cavorts all around in time and
space. but he that's by choice. That's different. He can go back to Gallifrey. Well, he could go back to Gallifrey, and once he finds Gallifrey, he can. And then let's not even talk about how we feel about Doctor Who these days anyway.
No. Anyway, we're watching Continuum, and we really like it. And we had to go back and revisit our episode that both episodes from Slice where we
interviewed
Simon Barry, the creator and producer, and
Michelle Nichols.
Yes.
Or was it Rachel Nichols?
Rachel Nichols.
Rachel Nichols, yes. So yeah, it was... this whole
catching up to do there.
Got a lot of catching up to do. It is completely my fault, but for what it's worth, I muscled my way through the first episode, and I will say that when I got to the end, game changer.
Oh my God!
Big time game changer, yeah. And now I'm hooked.
If you haven't watched Continuum, pick it up.
Pick it up. Already, it's coming off as a rather smart show. So that's probably going to be our big catch-up show for now.
Right.
But we'll try to do our work on Bones because we do need to kind of keep pace so that it'll sort of make sense when Sleepy Hollow finally does their crossover.
Exactly. So that's our comments for this week. If you like our show or even hate it or dislike it or have any comments about our show, please, you can comment on our Facebook page, YouTube episodes, or you can comment on an article or the episode at tggeeks.com, and you could receive a shout-out like Argle does every week on a future episode. Or you can call our listener feedback line, and we will play your comment on air. 469-TG-GEEKS. That's 469-844-3357.
This is Mark Biaggi, and you're listening to the Two Gay Geeks webcast. You name it, they'll talk about it.
Okay, I got a couple of news things that I really want to touch on. Most of these things have been pressed. They've been published on our TG Geeks website. So I would ask that if you want to know what it is that we're reporting on, go there. We were very busy this last week. We published a lot of interesting news stories, but I'm going to cover these really quickly just to kind of satiate everybody's appetites.
Whet your appetite.
What your appetite is. Channing Tatum. Well, there was a news story a few days back saying that he was going to be leaving the project Gambit, which is the spin-off of X-Files by 20th Century Fox. X-Men. See?
X-Files. Yes.
Yeah.
Gambit X-Files.
Gambit X-Files, yeah. X-Men, my bad. In any case, that caused a lot of concern among fans because apparently he's also a show producer or movie producer for this project. And everybody was wondering what the heck is going to happen with it now that he's going to be leaving. What's 20th Century Fox going to do? How are they going to get a big name actor to kind of take the part? Well, turns out, as of this morning, it's looking like he's going to stay with it. We don't know what the sticking point was between his people and 20th Century, but apparently it looks like it's been resolved. And as we learn more, we will share.
They probably put regular M&Ms instead of peanut M&Ms in his trailer.
You know, who knows? Maybe that's all it
never
took.
know.
I mean, you have no idea what's on his rider in terms of what kind of contract stipulations he has to have. It could be just something as simple as that. Who knows?
Who knows?
In interesting Netflix news, they are planning on releasing a new Marvel series every 6 months.
Yay!
And the way they're going to be doing this is right now they are working on Daredevil 2, Season 2, as well as Jessica Jones. So I think the idea is they're going to have Daredevil 2 premiere probably around the same time that it premiered last year, which if I'm not mistaken was like late April.
Yeah, something like that.
It was in the springtime. And then as soon as, well, of course, the whole series is going to drop in one big shot. So 6 months later, or either 6 months before, I'm not quite sure what the calendar is supposed to be on that, Jessica Jones will come out. And then they're going to be alternating and then, of course, introduce Luke Cage. They're going to introduce Iron Fist. And then that's all going to wrap up then with Defenders. But these are all going to be cycling out every 6 months. And with the successes of Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and all that, who's to say, there won't be repeating or multiple seasons of those as well. So they're really building in a nice little package here to kind of keep the Marvel fans on a very, very short leash.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. But if you want to see the full story, go to our website. Third, Chris Pine. He's just been hired to play Steve Trevor in the new Wonder Woman movie. Personally, well, it was interesting because he was also pegged to play Hal Jordan, or at least he was being looked at to play Hal Jordan for the new Green Lantern movie. I've got a theory as to why he decided to go for the Steve Trevor role instead. Go to the website. You can see that for yourself.
Yeah, the song Wonder Woman, what's the next line? Wonder Woman, how do you get into that suit? What are the words?
I'm going to go with what you said. I think that's I like that. Although don't tell it to Linda Carter. Fourth, also in Netflix news, much like what they're doing with Marvel, and of course, it's a Disney property, Star Wars is looking to do the same thing as well. There's some interesting theories as to why Star Wars would actually want to create independent shows or TV, possibly even TV series that are not network. Go to the website. There's some interesting theories that are being thrown out there. So yeah, they're looking at possibly, again, maybe on the every 6 month cycle, introduce a brand new Star Wars series or a new series that's set in the Star Wars universe. Could be interesting.
Yeah.
And then another story that I'm very interested in, I'm going to go into just a tiny bit more detail on this. It's about Philip Glass. He's going to be scoring alongside, what's his name? Marco Beltrami. They're doing Fantastic Four.
Interesting.
Now, I'm a little unsure of Beltrami. Well, he has done some work that I know a little tiny part of. He did do the movie score for World War Z, as well as Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. And World War Z I haven't seen. Terminator 3 I have forgotten. He did do iRobot, so I kind of have a sense of his score. It is a little bit big. You want to go for that big blockbuster type feel. But Philip Glass is the maestro of minimalism.
Yeah.
I mean, all you got to do is find...
It'll be big minimalism.
Well, he can do big minimalism. We've seen him do it in one of those.
Powakatsu.
Yeah, Powakatsu. He did it there. He keeps bringing this one theme back, and it just gets. It's a minimalist theme, but the layers are enormous. So I'm really intrigued with the idea of Philip Glass teaming up with Marco Beltrami to do the score for this movie. Apparently, the latest Fantastic Four trailer does highlight Philip Glass's score, and they're saying that this could herald a very new direction for Fantastic Four, that it may be going in a very dark direction. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Cool.
Yes. Also on the website, there's an interesting story about Ben Affleck, why he agreed to play Batman. Apparently, Zack Snyder confided in Ben Affleck and said he's going to be an older, broken Batman. And there's some interesting little elements to the story on our website that kind of hint as to maybe why he is older and broken. Check it out. You might find it interesting. Also, they have cast Jenna Malone, who's going to be playing Barbara Gordon.
Barbara Gordon?
Yes, also known as Batgirl, sometimes known as Oracle, depending on at what point in her life this is taking place. We don't really know. Go to our website, tggeeks.com, and see that for yourself. Get all the details there. Also, just released a big story on new casting for season 4 of Arrow. You can check that all out for yourself. I'm going to talk about one person, though. Jerry Ryan has just been announced to play Jessica Danforth, who is a friend of the Queen family as well as an aspiring politician. So I'm very intrigued with that. But there's a lot of casting that is involving Oliver's past. So they're not done with the history storyline, if you will, while Oliver was missing.
Yeah.
They're still touching on that, and there's 2 interesting castings that are taking place.
Gotta get to his training.
I don't think so.
Sometime they've got to get to there.
Well, they've already kind of touched on it, but yes, there's got to be more stuff on his training, and we may get that towards the end. Then, just released on our website today, Marvel did something unbelievably genius. They released 4 video shorts that all revolve around the Ant-Man movie. They kind of serve as backstories. Go check them out. All 4 of them, you can see them on our website, tggeeks.com. They are a lot of fun. I enjoyed watching them enormously. Now, I want to briefly touch on something that a lot of geeks are very, very into. It's professional wrestling. Why am I bringing it up? Well, we just lost one of our phenomenal wrestlers and amazing characters in the ring, the Rowdy Roddy Piper. He just recently passed away at the age of 61. And I know that a lot of older time professional wrestling fans, and I'm one of them. I'm 54. I mean, I grew up when Roddy was introduced to the National Wrestling Alliance. Kind of sorry that he's going. The praises and accolades that are coming in, even from those people who were sort of cast to play his enemies in professional wrestling, turned out, as we all know, they're really the best of friends. So I just wanted to say, Rowdy Roddy Piper, may you rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Last, final, friend of the show, Matt Chesson, who made the movie Focus that we have raved about in past articles and on this show. He recently showed the movie Focus at the Prescott Film Festival, and it won Best Arizona Film.
Cool.
So just wanted to give that shout out to Matt and to Jeff Lynne. Thank you very much for putting together what we think is one of the best short films we've seen in a very, very long time. That award is very well deserved, and future success to the both of you.
Yes, congratulations. Up next time, who knows? We might have another interview.
We
never know.
might. It might be stories. We might even surprise ourselves. Who knows?
Exactly. Okay, that should do it for this episode of TG Geeks Webcast. Be sure to check out the article for a few links to various things that we talked about with Larry and other things that have going on. And remember, you can comment on our Facebook page or website, tggeeks.com, or you can leave us a voicemail at 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. From TG Squared Studios, I am Keith Lane. Thanks for listening. I bid you peace.
Cheers.
Ha